Warlocks, you're up now. Let's take a look at your exotic armor, starting with chest armor. Alchemist Raiment is up first, a Taken King exotic. After a true play session with these robes, I can safely say that they are really bad. You're watching a 3-minute clip sped up in Undying Mind. I understand it's just one sample, but in these 3 minutes, I gained a total of 8 Glimmer. 8. That is horrible. The middle column used to increase the amount of special and heavy drops you got, now it just increases your special or heavy capacity, which is not nearly as exciting of a bonus. So they're not good for glimmer farming, the middle column of bonuses isn't great, and I don't think orbs of light being eaten in favor of grenades and melee as opposed to your super is a good bonus, even if it's the best of its kind. That'll be a 1 in all categories. They look nice though. Heart of the PRAXIC Fire was a previously highly sought after exotic armor after its main bonus seemed so potent. After some testing was done, it was discovered that at most, you'll get 1 extra charge of your grenade when you activate Radiance. Just 1. I personally don't value that very highly, and I don't value the increased agility that much either, although others might. The benefit you should be looking at is the amount of melee attacks you gain when using these, which is about 2. Heart of the PRAXIC Fire gets around a 2 from me in both PvE and PvP. They do something, but it doesn't really feel like they do anything. I don't feel more powerful using them, I don't feel different, I just feel like I'm still the same. Perhaps one of the most underwhelming exotics in the entire game, Starfire Protocol gets you another fusion grenade, and that's it. Considering Warlocks already have a bonus that can get them a second grenade, and it's a good choice to pick, well, that doesn't really make these very exciting. You don't really need damage over time for a fusion grenade stick in PvP because as we've learned, a fusion stick is lethal under all normal conditions, so that makes Gift of the Sun all the more wiser of a choice. In PvP, they get a 1 because of what was just described, and a 1.5 in PvE because fusions plus damage over time isn't the most crazy idea in the world for high priority PvE targets. These are a last resort for PvE though. VOIDFANG vestments net you an extra Axion Seeker on your grenade and give you grenade energy when you respawn. These are a somewhat viable option in all aspects of play. With a PvE bloom focused build, Axion Bolt can spread out, kill multiple targets, and really chain damage across a big area, although the respawning grenade energy is less than thrilling in PvE. In PvP, it works well in its intended form, more Seekers to hit more players. However, in Trials of Osiris, it's great for Sunsinger Warlocks running a Viking Funeral Touch of Flame build to have a burning grenade every single round. Yes, Firebolt grenades were nerfed, but this build is still incredibly strong. Overall, it nets a 3 in PvE, but considering how strong the effect of having a burning grenade still is in PvP, I can't give this thing anything lower than a 4, and it definitely gets a 5 for Trials, although a Tier 5 Discipline build reduces the necessity of needing these for Trials. Claws of AHAMKARA play to one of the big strengths of the Warlock class, their melee attacks. Getting multiple charges of melee abilities is a very useful tool for PvP. Flame Shield and Amplitude come to mind immediately. In PvE, if an energy drain build were slightly more potent, these would be a good option, but melee isn't nearly as vital to the PvE experience compared to PvP. They snag a 3.5 for solo PvP experiences, a 3.5 for trials, and a 2 to a 2.5 for PvE. A solid mid-tier option for all. Nothing Manacles make their return to Destiny in Year 2 form, getting you an extra Scatter Grenade and the grenade gains tracking abilities. Scatter Grenade is a very lethal grenade when it hits targets effectively, and in PvE can absolutely crush high tier targets, making it great for single target damage. However, with their return came a nerf, and their tracking isn't nearly as proficient as it was in Year 1. You're going to need to be a lot more accurate with your grenade tosses, and this is where they falter in PvP. These gloves haven't brought back Voidwalkers in the way that I was hoping that they would, which is unfortunate. They net a 3 to a 3.5 in PvE due to their very good damage, and about a 2 everywhere else due to the less forgiving tracking. The Impossible Machines are a very boring set of gloves, but they do provide landfall. Landfall is good enough on its own, but having it and Superconductor for PvE, or it and Ionic Blink for PvP, makes it really powerful. I know I often express my desire for an exotic that does something very frequently, but there are a couple of super ability focused exotics that still work out well. Helm of Saint 14 and Celestial Nighthawk come to mind. These gloves don't have the punch that something like Helm of Saint 14 had in year 1, but let's face facts. They're one of your only Stormcaller options, so it could be worse. Stormcaller right now is among the strongest PvP subclasses with regards to general 6v6 play, with a super that can last 20 seconds, and starting it off with a mini Fist of Havoc can enable you to really control the pace of the game for those next 20 seconds. They get a 3 rating in general PvE activities, and a 3.5 for most PvP activities. They're a solid option, but they aren't going to dramatically push you over the top compared to other exotics in the game. Apotheosis Veil is back with a slight buff, restoring melee and energy in addition to health when you use your super, but I imagine this will mostly be used for the health regen. To be fair, that effect does have some utility in specific scenarios, and therefore I can see it being used for very special circumstances. The solo Black Spindle run, for example, would be a decent time to utilize this helm, but this is definitely not a great all-around exotic to be using. It's not all bad, and I'm probably a little too harsh on it, but I certainly don't think it's worth anything more than a 2 for all aspects of play. It's a safe exotic, it's an insurance exotic, but it's not one that I'm particularly fond of. Light Beyond Nemesis, much like the Crest of Alpha Lupi, gets varied ratings because of the nature of Resurrection in Destiny. Highly rated in 3v3 PvP and Trials of Osiris, with significantly lower ratings for nearly all other aspects of play. Obsidian Mind was the Voidwalker Dream Helm in year 1, netting you extra super energy whenever you kill stuff with Nova Bomb. Unfortunately, the power this helm had in Crota's End has not translated well over into year 2 PvE content. You can still make it work in some form, but your Nova Bombs need to really be on point, and it takes a lot more PvE IQ to use very effectively. It's never been a highly rated PvP exotic though. I can still give it a 2.5 in PvE because good use makes you very powerful, but it's not even a blip on my PvP radar. The Ram was a surprise return in the December patch. This was the powerhouse PvP helm during the House of Wolves era. It returned, but not in its old form, with the armor bonus getting a little bit of a nerf since then. All Voidwalker melees triggering lifesteal on hit is also pretty good. You can make up some of the armor lost by making sure that you have a chest armor bonus to match with the increased armor from the helm. In PvE, it's not as important, but is more of an insurance exotic. However, I wouldn't use it if I was anything other than Voidwalker for PvE purposes, and I think I'd end up using Nothing Manacles over the Ram in PvE anyway, as the Manacles have more of a higher power potential. In PvP, it's an all-around good option for 6v6 and general play, with it getting a slightly lower rating if you're not a Voidwalker. Finally, the Stag is probably among the worst exotics for Warlocks, which is unfortunate considering how cool it looks. I did a test to see how much of an effect this actually has when your teammates die. At tier 4 Discipline, your super recharges in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. With the Stag, your super recharges in about 1 minute and 45 seconds, which on paper looks great. But in the heat of battle, the effect doesn't really feel that potent, and it only works once per life. If you're in trials, this helm could help you get a super quickly if you're really close to one, and if you can delay the game, but it's simply not as helpful as other exotics. I'm not even including the overshield portion of the bonus because it's basically irrelevant. Not to mention that using an exotic that relies on people dying for it to be useful is not exactly my idea of good. I'm choosing not to review Skull of Dire AHAMKARA because I think Bungie goofed up. The only time I've seen anyone ever get it is the one time that Xur sold it. Otherwise, I haven't seen anything out of Engrams, the Nightfall, the Raid, you name it, and I feel like it might have accidentally been left on a loot list when it shouldn't have. Either way, it's not the most fantastic helm in the world. As for my personal selections, I'm using the Impossible Machines basically whenever I am a Stormcaller, which is pretty often, although I will switch to Claws of AHAMKARA on occasion for general PvP. In Trials, I'm typically running Light Beyond Nemesis or a VOIDFANG Vestment Firebolt build. For the Raid, I've been practicing with Nothing Manacles. That'll do it for the Warlock Exotics. Hunters, you're coming up very, very soon. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.